There are a lot of companies trying to come up with cleaner and more efficient energy. One of the most interesting types of energy being talked about right now is hydrogen. What is it? How does it work? We're going to find out from our guest today. He joins us now from Calgary, Dave Vanden Assem. He's the Director of Clean Technology from the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence. Dave, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Now, Dave, what is the Hydrogen Centre of Excellence really all about?
Well, the Center of Excellence was set up about a year and a half ago now, maybe closer to 2 years ago. And it's designed to help integrate hydrogen into the energy system within Alberta, as well as provide some opportunities for low carbon energy exports outside of the province.
So where does your funding come from? Is it mostly from the government? Is it private funding?
We received $50 million from the government of Alberta to set up and operate the Center of Excellence through to March 2026. Of that money, we have allocated $38 million towards technology development, $10 million towards building facilities and testing equipment, and $4 million towards studies and public awareness and codes and standards support and development. We've received matching funding from Natural Resources Canada, our federal friends, for $15 million to support technology development. And we've received $3 million from our Prairies Economic Development Canada, our other federal friends, for an additional $3 million. We anticipate that we should be able to see projects, technology development projects primarily, that will add up to about $300 million or more. So there's some good leverage for an initial $50 million investment.
So Dave, with Bridge City News, we not only like to inform people, but we like to educate them as well. So let me ask you something. How is hydrogen produced? Does it mainly come from natural gas?
Well, we certainly have a lot of natural gas here, and it's abundant and inexpensive, so it makes a lot of sense for us to produce it from natural gas. One can also produce hydrogen from splitting water molecules. It's called electrolysis. So both are legitimate, commercially available technologies, and it really depends on where the resources are most abundant and available.
I've heard that hydrogen is potentially a renewable resource by a process that basically uses sunlight and water. Is that true?
That's the electrolysis process I was mentioning. So one can take solar energy, convert it to electricity, or wind energy, or hydro power, convert it to electricity, and use that electricity to split water molecules into their component hydrogen and oxygen parts. And of course, we take the hydrogen and use that for various applications.
So what kinds of things are we able to use hydrogen fuel for? Can we use it to power our vehicles, our homes, or even commercially?
Those are some really good options. There's hydrogen is best used where it's difficult to decarbonize through other means. And we're finding that the most traction we're getting, the most interest and the best opportunities are in transportation, especially heavy freight and commercial freight transportation, such as big trucks and trains. One can also use it for heating in residential and commercial applications. And we also have a tremendous opportunity to provide another low carbon export product because there are other regions around the world that are really interested in our low cost, low carbon intensity hydrogen.
Yeah, didn't Germany come knocking recently and talk to our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, about tapping into some of our hydrogen here, and Trudeau kind of pushed them aside?
I can't recall the exact details of how all that worked, but I know that there are some natural benefits to producing hydrogen using the available wind resources, for example, in the East Coast, to electrolyze water and have a short trip to across the ocean to Germany, Netherlands, UK, other countries that are also interested in hydrogen. For us in the West, we're actually really close to, or reasonably close to, Asian markets such as Japan and South Korea, and there's quite a bit of interest from those countries in our low cost, low carbon intensity hydrogen.
So Dave, how green really is hydrogen fuel? To what degree does it actually lower emissions?
Well, there's a number of different ways to produce hydrogen, and each one has its own carbon footprint, shall we say. Uh, and one can optimize that carbon footprint in terms of either capturing carbon that is produced during the process, or in some cases, not produce carbon dioxide at all. And so it really, there's a broad range. So here in Alberta, we're really good at capturing carbon dioxide and sequestering it underground. We have tremendous expertise in that area. We've been doing it for decades. So that allows us to use natural gas as a feedstock to produce hydrogen, capture the carbon, and produce low carbon emissions products. When we have abundant renewable resources, renewable power, and water, together we can produce hydrogen through the electrolysis process I mentioned earlier. That is also low carbon intensity. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and we have the ability to do all of those, really.
And we need, especially with the emergency we had with our grid recently, where we had to actually end up borrowing power from Saskatchewan here. Dave, do you think Alberta is in a position to be a global leader when it comes to hydrogen production? I mean, Premier Daniel Smith seems to think so.
Well, I happen to agree with her, and we are already Canada's largest producer of hydrogen by a long margin. We're currently using it for industrial processes, upgrading hydrocarbons or manufacturing fertilizer and other things. This is an expansion of that capability into new market areas that we're building. We are quite, because of our pedigree, our experience in working with hydrogen, we have some natural advantages over other regions in the world that can't produce it or don't know how or don't have the expertise or infrastructure. So I think we have a great position to be able to take advantage of this wave that's coming.
So how can we maybe take things to the next level and tap into maybe other markets around the world and really expand our hydrogen production?
Well, one of the biggest volume opportunities that we have for hydrogen production and use is for by exporting it as a product. One can export hydrogen either as the gas, which is two hydrogen atoms together as a molecule, and ship that as a gas, or we have other forms of that contain a lot of hydrogen and no carbon that we can also use. Ammonia is one. It's a liquid at warmer temperatures than hydrogen liquefies, and so it's a little easier to move. We know how to move liquids quite well. So there's a lot of different ways to get it to the markets we need.
I've heard some concerns, Dave, about the safety of hydrogen use. Are there any risks involved?
Well, there's risks involved with everything, but I think the key is to ensure that we have a rigorous and well put together set of codes and standards and regulations, which are there to ensure that safety is being maintained and preserved. We have been using natural gas for decades, and we do that very safely. And we can do the same thing with hydrogen. There's already, hundreds of kilometers of pipelines for hydrogen in operation, have been in operation for decades. As I mentioned, it's an industrial chemical, so it's being used safely. It's more expanding those codes and standards and regulations to encompass these new market opportunities. And so those processes are in place. A lot of smart people working on that, trying to get that set up. So we're very excited for that.
But what are some of the potential dangers when it comes to hydrogen use?
Well, hydrogen is a gas like natural gas. So if it's anywhere near flames, then it will ignite. It's the same as natural gas. So we want to make sure that it's controlled and it's contained, and that we have the appropriate detection mechanisms, the appropriate safety mechanisms in place to ensure that these things are under control.
So I understand that the cost of producing hydrogen fuel is sometimes part of the challenge. What kind of progress is being made in this area?
Well, there's some great progress being made currently in terms of getting larger scale production developed, so that we have those economies of scale. So the larger the facility, if it's a centralized facility, the lower the unit cost, or the lower the cost per kilogram, for example, of the hydrogen produced. And so there's Air Products announced earlier their $1.6 billion blue hydrogen hub in Edmonton that's going to produce a tremendous amount of hydrogen that's going to serve the industrial market as well as some of these emerging opportunities. And several others are planning, announcing, and in development with projects as well. There's also a number of low carbon emissions ammonia projects that are also being announced and contemplated in the province. So it's going to be a tremendous boom in economic activity in the province should all these projects go ahead.
Let's circle back to hydrogen and vehicles as a fuel source for just a moment here, Dave. If we see continued investment in hydrogen and if the price comes down, what kind of a timeline are we talking about to see proper infrastructure for fueling stations put in place to make hydrogen vehicles a reality?
There's a lot of work being done in that area. A lot of the fueling station providers are starting to work their way into the ecosystem here, which is great to see. A lot of interest. And there's, if one produces or builds a fueling station, there has to be vehicles to fuel. So we have an interesting situation where we're starting from scratch with a new industry, essentially. And so we have to make sure that we're doing it in a way that provides the certainty of demand, so the producers are interested in producing the hydrogen, but the end users are there as well to use it. So we have to build that up in pieces, and that's where you see a lot of the hydrogen hub activity in the province. We have the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub that's established, and they're doing some great things in there. There's one fueling station operating currently in Edmonton. It's commercial, not generally for the public yet. It's because it's for the big trucks. But we are in discussions with, and there's a lot of planning going on for other hubs in the province, and they will be building their own infrastructure as well. And then when we get the interconnectivity of those hubs, then we have a network, and that makes it a whole lot easier to go from location to location and have certainty that you have fuel there waiting for you.
I remember my wife's family had this old Chevy Suburban. It was a gas-powered vehicle, and they converted it over to propane. And that was quite interesting, you know, when they went down to the United States touring, especially the West Coast Highway 101, they had to make sure there was a gas station that actually had propane so they could fill up. I wonder if we'd see something like that when it comes to hydrogen. Just convert it over to hydrogen, no big deal.
Well, yeah, these things evolve over time. The same conversation we were having a little while ago about electric charging stations, and you know, the infrastructure started to show up more and more locations. We're starting to get it integrated into building design, into different applications here. So we're starting to see more and more of that. But in the early days of electric vehicles, not too long ago, folks had to do the same thing. They had to go, okay, well, how far can I get with this charge? How long do I need to stay there to recharge it? And now they're becoming more common. So it evolves over time, and it starts with these discrete chunks of development.
Now, what about the agriculture sector? Does hydrogen maybe have the potential to be a game changer for that industry as well?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at that, and it potentially very exciting. So one is providing a decarbonized fuel that can replace diesel in particular for the heavy duty applications that are again hard to decarbonize. So there's one opportunity. The other opportunity is in the production of hydrogen. There's a couple of a handful of organizations in the province that produce bioethanol that can then be converted into hydrogen. So SBI is one. I've got the other name here. Azola Hydrogen's another one. There's a few of them out there that are doing it. So the nice thing about that is ethanol is easy to transport and store, much easier than hydrogen. So they do that, and then you produce the hydrogen on demand at the fueling station. So it's a real smart idea in a lot of ways.
Dave Vanden Assem is the Director of Clean Technology with the Hydrogen Center of Excellence. Thanks so much, Dave, for joining us today from Calgary.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.